Okay, let's get started again. Thank you for your patience. I'd like to welcome to the stage Tony Johnson from the Truman Center. Tony, please.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm not from the government, but I am here to help you. I used to be in government, so I understand that space really well. And today I'm here to talk to you about the national security aspects, or at least how we view this issue from our professional perspective. So good afternoon again. My name is Tony Johnson. I'm the president and CEO of the Truman Center for National Policy and the Truman National Security Project. We're a proud supporter of the DC Privacy Summit, presented by Project Glitch and PGP. And I'd also like to thank our hosts, the U.S. Marshall School of Business and the Van Eyck Digital Assets Initiative, and our sponsor, the Coinbase Institute. Thank you, Paul. I'm honored to be here with you today. All of you are the brightest thinkers and boldest leaders in the fintech policy space. By being here today, you've committed to address one of the most complex and urgent challenges of our time. That is the intersection of emerging digital assets, technology, privacy, and policy, and the global financial systems. Now, I'm not a financial expert, and you can see by the uniform that I'm wearing, which is mainly pretty official, and I didn't get the uniform for just the blazer and no ties. But I am a national security expert. And I happen to lead a community of national security and foreign policy professionals in the public and private sector, including veterans and intelligence community specialists and industry technologists, whose job it is to identify and understand and confront the threats to our national security every day. And so you might think I'm here to scare the blockchain out of you, and that's not what I'm going to do. But I am going to talk very seriously about the challenges in the national security space that we see from this issue. For example, we know that rapid advances in blockchain technology and digital assets and cryptographic privacy systems is a critical national security issue for the United States and for the security integrity of the global financial systems. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why that is and how we see this through a national security lens. So again, brace yourselves, because it's going to be a little bit dramatic. But the problems we face are serious, and I think it's important to point them out. Some of them you've heard here today. For example, blockchain technology and digital assets are frequently used by bad actors to hold nations and corporations at risk, to fund terrorism, to facilitate international crime, and to defraud people of their hard-earned income and savings. We know that rogue states use cryptocurrencies to export terror, enable crimes, and evade sanctions. North Korea and Iran are at the top of the Financial Action Task Force's blacklist. North Korea uses cryptocurrencies in money laundering schemes and to export and proliferate WMD. Iran uses blockchain and digital assets to finance human trafficking, weapons smuggling, and to fund terrorist activities by its proxies, including organizations like Hezbollah and Hamas. Increasingly, the sophistication of blockchain technology, digital assets, and cryptographic privacy systems makes it difficult for security agencies and our national security to protect our national security, to prevent and protect against these attacks. That's the way we see it when we look through the national security lens. What I hope you see through your lens is a pathway to a holistic response that empowers the U.S. national security community to respond effectively to these threats, to defend the nation, and to protect the American people, all while maintaining our strategic, economic, and technological edge. At Truman, we believe the United States has a foreign policy national security stake in the evolution of digital assets, infrastructure, and cryptographic privacy systems. Primarily, that perspective is grounded in the belief that the United States should use its diplomatic influence, economic capacity, technological prowess to lead and shape the regulatory policy, standards, and implementation framework for the global financial system, to enable continued technological progress on a trajectory that promotes democratic and open societies, strengthens national security safeguards, and protects data and privacy. I think we're standing on the threshold of opportunity here, and we believe that U.S. leadership now is important on this issue and essential for the future. The challenge we're facing is about strategic competition to shape the digital future of international financial systems. As the guarantor of a democratic, open, and stable global financial system, the United States should not be voiceless in this debate. In particular, because it's basically impossible for Americans, or anyone for that matter, to learn and work, bank and shop, socialize, and entertain without using the internet. Americans need a safe, secure, reliable, democratized, and cutting-edge digital asset systems, and the United States should be out front in this debate. From a national security standpoint, the key points in the debate about the future of digital assets are these. The U.S. big tech model allows corporations to use highly centralized digital payment systems and aggregate users' personal information, then use that to influence customers' behaviors and for commercial purposes. On the other side of the divide, the authoritarian governments, who are adversaries in many cases and competitors in most, use highly centralized surveillance-based digital payment systems to collect and aggregate the private information of anyone who uses the tech, and then use that information to manipulate people's behaviors, to influence the decisions of governments, and to pressure or attempt to destabilize rival governments for their own political purposes. Our adversaries are already exporting compromised cryptography, corrupt digital asset technologies, rigid and centralized surveillance-based networks, and digital payment systems that undermine the integrity of the global financial systems and introduces significant risks and vulnerabilities. That is a threat to U.S. national security that cannot go unanswered and should be met head-on. So today, I'm going to ask that as you listen to our next guest, think about your role in this space and what you can do to address this critical challenge. Let me introduce our featured speaker. Carole has been in the vanguard of helping to shape. Carole House is a special advisor for cybersecurity and critical infrastructure policy. She's an expert in cybersecurity and risk management and a prominent voice in the world of digital assets and emerging technology policy. Carole has been in the vanguard of helping to shape the U.S. regulatory landscape for cryptocurrency for years, so it's no surprise that she has an impressive background. In addition to serving in various White House advisory roles, Carole co-authored the first ever executive order on a comprehensive framework for responsible development digital assets, released in the fall of 2022. The executive order laid out a comprehensive framework for the responsible development of these technologies. Moreover, Carole has ensured that the United States remains a leader in blockchain and digital assets technologies innovation, making numerous and significant contributions to digital assets and technology policy. Carole has also been active in discussions around cryptocurrencies regulation, recently testifying before Congress on important issues about the linkages between crime and cryptocurrencies. Carole is known for saying, "We need to ensure that innovation in the digital asset space occurs here in the United States and not somewhere else." I totally agree. The comment, which reflects my beliefs, Truman's beliefs, also reflects Carole's role as a proponent of a robust and secure environment for cryptocurrency development and innovation. In June 2024, Carole joined the White House team in her current role, where she continues to advocate and work on policy for a balanced approach to digital assets that fosters innovation and ensures consumer protections. We are very fortunate to have her here with us today to share her expertise, her experience, and her vision for the future of blockchain, digital assets, technologies, and innovation, and cryptocurrency. Please join me in welcoming Carole House.
Oh my goodness, Tony is magnificent, and I do not need to speak. I think hearing more of Tony is going to benefit all of us. So good afternoon, everyone, for that overly generous and kind introduction, and for the honor of getting to speak to all of you and amongst so many friends and former colleagues in the space at the DC Privacy Summit. It's really an honor to be here amongst so many thought leaders, and especially to talk about such a critical issue that, like, all of us are facing as we stand at the frontier and the forefront of shaping cyber and digital and emerging tech policy. As nations continue to transition services into a more digital world, both great economic opportunities, but also expanded globally exploitable attack surfaces will continue to grow. The future of digital economies relies on our ability to operate digital infrastructure and provide these digital goods and services in secure and trustworthy ways. This brings to the forefront really complex issues that demand accounting for balance and considerations across policy objectives like freedom, privacy, security, and accountability, each of which are made drastically more complex with the speed, scale, and sophistication of technological advancements that force a rethinking or at least a re-examination of age-old approaches. I'll also highlight that balance, I know, isn't quite the right word here. I think we all know in looking at privacy policy that balance normally intimates a vision of thinking of things that are opposite each other and don't have mutually reinforcing or connective tissue. That's just not the case with national security interests and privacy and freedom and accountability. These things all touch each other. There are times where there's equities that do have to be balanced, but I feel like a lot of it is really more about driving mutual alignment and finding that connective tissue. I recently spoke at the National Defense University, where the focus of the conference was very poignant: learning from the past, preparing for tomorrow. My first response to that prospect is, we better be. And then I also felt that that moniker was striking when thinking about the impacts of emerging technologies like artificial intelligence models that train on data and learn from existing or historical contexts, but where we're all trying to use and figure out how to inject safeguards into and prepare for applications and conduct machine learning to prepare for what we need tomorrow. And now I'm here to speak to all of you today, and with experts discussing the impact of emerging technologies and the convergence of a lot of these technologies in interesting and kind of scary ways also. And on the exact day that President Biden issued the first ever national security memorandum on artificial intelligence. So I'm going to frame up some of the lessons that the admin and industry that I've seen been accounting for in this space, what we need to do to fortify our readiness and build trust and security and privacy in the digital domain and cybersecurity to secure that future of digital economies and find those touch points for privacy. I'm going to focus on the multidimensional nature of threats that we face and of these technologies. Also highlight how accountability is going to play a role here. And then I was inspired by Tony's remarks, and I might share a little anecdote from my childhood focused on readiness. So first, I want to tell you a little bit about me, although Tony did a very generous job highlighting some of my background and the roles that I've been blessed to play alongside many of you. I want to share a little bit about me and how my background is also multidimensional, like many of you here. Issues of national, economic, and technological interests have affected many aspects of my life. My father taught me to don my chemical protective mask in 9 seconds by the time that I was 12 years old, because I lived an hour south of the most heavily defended border in the world in South Korea. And service members that are deployed to Korea, they and their service members get issued gas masks in the case of a possible chemical attack from North Korea. That moment as a child underscored to me that my status as a non-combatant and a child would not protect me from a gruesome threat once unleashed. That gas mask also led to an amusing anecdote about our family holiday photo wearing those gas masks in front of our Christmas tree being featured in the Awkward Family Photos calendar. That is another but totally, completely true story. But this is an unfortunate reality of the many grave threats presented by rogue nations and transnational organized crime that persist today, and which Tony outlined are also at the heart of national security communities' concerns in this space. And in the domain of cybercrime and many actors that have been using and exploiting blockchain technology, as we've seen with terrorism and other asymmetric threats, non-state actors can have state-level consequences. So, like I'm sure many others today, that dynamic and multifaceted background for me, followed by a variety of roles in government and industry, have led me to want to sit here at the heart of emerging tech, cybersecurity, and national security issues, like so many of you here today. And thank you to all of you who serve as part of the national security apparatus. Compliance, I know compliance sounds very exciting to everyone, but when you're fighting money launderers and terrorism financiers, compliance sounds really exciting. So I really want to highlight also the multidimensional aspects and how the U.S. government sees privacy as a multidimensional issue. There's many outcomes and equities that we desire for our financial system. They range across ensuring financial system and market stability to driving consumer protection and protection of sensitive data, fighting financial criminals and money launderers, and promoting U.S. leadership and technological innovation and our role in the financial system. National security areas like combating money laundering and terrorism financing is not an objective that we drive toward in a vacuum, nor are objectives related to human dignity like those surrounding privacy, consent, equity, and inclusion. Those are not. pursued without consideration of other factors, like how to preserve critical access and promote services to underserved populations, while also enabling us to root out those malevolent actors seeking to exploit consumers and the financial system via pervasive fraud schemes, money laundering network activities that are supporting cartels, and cybercrime ecosystems. So instead, these areas, they're not incompatible. They align in a common, mutually supporting vision of providing inclusive access and appropriately respecting privacy to enable safe, affordable, and secure access to digital and financial goods and services. So in fact, privacy is a critical feature and cornerstone of democratic, national, and economic security interests. So I also really appreciate the opportunity to underscore how our efforts to enhance security and trust in cyberspace are integral to promoting those safe and secure aspects of objectives like privacy and financial inclusion. Privacy is a major focal point for the innovation space. Many people in this room have been presenting and talking about it, are building the solutions that are going to solve the needs that we have for ensuring privacy in the future of digital economies. So with growing emerging technologies like blockchain, with immutable public ledgers and AI scalable, like ingesting and use of mass amounts of data, I'm very glad that privacy is being considered in many avenues of innovation because golly, do those technologies need it. Innovation sits at the heart of the US economy. It's essential to how we generate jobs and grow new industries, how we preserve global economic interest, leadership, and competitiveness. However, responsible innovation does not mean the unchecked technological advancement without regard to the implications for society, security, and democratic values. So enter here talking about what privacy is and what it means. And many here I know have participated in standards bodies, so I'm going to talk a bit about standards because I'm a bit of a standards nerd. So, like I said, privacy is not incompatible with national security interests, nor are national security interests incompatible with individual privacy and human dignity. To demonstrate that, humor me while I walk through the privacy framework as outlined by NIST, our National Institute for Standards and Technology inside of the Department of Commerce. This framework helps us to identify and prioritize actions for reducing privacy risk. This framework walks us through how to identify risk, how to govern it, steps to put in place controls, communicate, and then put in place the necessary protections that we need. Also consider the privacy and engineering objectives that are outlined in the framework. We have predictability about data and its processing, manageability for providing administration of data in its collection, alteration, deletion, and selective disclosure, and disassociability to enable processing without association beyond the operational requirements of the system. Note that nowhere in there is a reference to requiring that you render information completely undiscoverable and completely anonymous without regard for national security or consumer or market needs or anti-money laundering necessities in financial systems. Privacy doesn't inherently mean the absence of data or anonymity of persons. As discussed here today, it typically means there is sensitive data that should be protected with certain permissions, conditions, and protections that can enable it to be disclosed under those sensitive conditions and permissions. So that's critical for the discussions here in the cryptocurrency ecosystem as we consider what to do about privacy in this space. It's interesting to talk about privacy in an ecosystem where a lot of people are publishing their transactions publicly on a ledger. Recognize that. I'm sure that I'm not the first person to make that joke today, certainly never in this system. But it's also really apt given that privacy is the future of this space. It's why the cryptocurrency space was one of the loudest vocal advocates for driving innovation in privacy-enhancing technologies for a long time. And I certainly believe that with this growth of artificial intelligence capabilities and the potential opportunity for what are currently proprietary clustering algorithms that many blockchain analytics firms also in this room may have that may be open source in 5 or 10 years given the growth of AI capabilities. The only future of public ledgers, I think, is going to be privacy-enhancing technologies. I don't publish my credit card statement online. It's not because there's anything illicit in it, just the world doesn't need to know the embarrassing amount of money that I spend on DoorDash and Amazon. So because of that, we need privacy-enhancing technologies built into these ecosystems. They are not incompatible, they are necessary, but also privacy does not mean complete anonymity and the absence of discoverability. So this is really a tough issue in a space that is still very much maturing and that needs to continue to mature. And while still operating at trillions in market cap, with high value activity comes inherently high risks that we must figure out how to mitigate and enter that balance or that connective tissue between privacy, freedom, security, and accountability that we need to put in place. There are deeply complex issues at play in areas like know your customer requirements, doing a binary like yes or no check against like a blacklist or a do not allow list, like an SDN list, which is our sanctions list. I'm sure that have been probably discussed earlier today. That is not knowing your customer or mitigating risk or continuously monitoring to understand the risk profile for someone. But it is a very important check that needs to be there. It's just one of many of a suite of intersecting and mutually reinforcing operational and technological controls that need to be put in place. So instead, we must continue to pursue the discussions like those that are happening today and ensure intellectual honesty and rigor on why we need these protections in place, knowing that risk management is also not risk elimination. It absolutely is not, and recognizing that technology solutions can exist and be implemented throughout the entire technology stack as part of enabling the integrity and confidentiality of these systems. This is also going to become increasingly more important as the continued convergence of commercial and financial activity happens with information activity. I know that's discussed quite often in this space, but part of what's so interesting and special, one of the many reasons why cryptocurrency is such an interesting and special domain is because of the fact that these technologies allow for now on the exact same rails, financial and information transactions to occur at the same time. And with the right obfuscation, you can't tell which is in fact happening. And we demand a different level of privacy and a different level of discoverability in our information activity versus in our financial activity. As more and more blockchain use cases continue to grow and become more prevalent, I think that presents a very fascinating technology and policy challenge in order to figure out how do you balance and ensure the right type of balanced approach on privacy and discoverability on rails that can both be supporting financial and information activity at the same time. So I know I mentioned talking about the multidimensional aspect of privacy. I want to talk about the multidimensional and dynamic aspect of the threats that we're dealing with related to privacy. So I'll examine a little bit the dimensions of cybersecurity issues that I've been working on at the National Security Council, and many of my colleagues have also been leading, that demonstrate how there's both promise and peril and issues that we must address. Quantum computing is a great example. While quantum information science holds the potential to drive innovations across the American economy from fields diverse from materials sciences to pharmaceuticals to finance and energy, future quantum computers may also have the ability to break some of today's most common forms of encryption. And I'm grateful to NIST, our standards agency in the Department of Commerce that I mentioned earlier, for its leadership recently in publishing new post-quantum cryptographic standards in August that will help to assure the safety and security in the future against quantum attacks. Of course, we must also discuss AI and cryptocurrency, a dimension has a really fascinating intersection between these two technologies that I think can reinforce each other's best and worst traits in really interesting ways, depending on what safeguards you put in place. And also that underscores this fascinating paradigm shift towards democratization of access and decentralization of access to really sophisticated technologies. So first on AI, since it is the day of the NSM being issued by President Biden, AI isn't new. Many of you have been using it for years. Many of you have been developing models for years. I myself have built machine learning models. Please don't look at my GitHub. They're terrible, but what is new now is this democratized access to really sophisticated artificial intelligence capabilities like large language models, and that its transition to so many generative use cases presents really fascinating economic use cases as well as illicit potential use cases. These technologies are inherently dual use in many ways. They offer tremendous promise to advance our economies and societies and to uplift and empower people around the world, but they also create pipelines to the potential scalability of really illicit activity. And some examples here are that the same advanced protein models that we use to be able to advance and accelerate vaccine discovery can also be used to accelerate the development of bioweapons. The same data, sensors, and algorithms that can drive faster response to emergencies in a crisis situation could also drive government monitoring of citizens and control of populations to stifle dissent and surveil and censor without the right safeguards being put in place. And then the same models to drive more secure code that underpins our infrastructure and certainly everything in the crypto space that is reliant on code also can vastly accelerate the deployment and delivery of malware and malicious cyber activities. So all of these issues have major potential impacts on privacy, human life, and dignity. And then, of course, enter cryptocurrency. Of course, Tony discussed it very thoroughly earlier about crypto, that it has great potential for positive use, but also without building in the necessary protections. You have features that are really attractive to licit users and also to illicit users. So because of that, this peer-to-peer capability to send instantaneous cross-border value transfer with increased speed and cost efficiencies, very attractive, especially in the wake of anti-money laundering regimes lagging significantly. And then with the absence or reduction of financial institution intermediaries, or at least a transition to different types of intermediaries and touch points that typically aren't regulated, it removes a lot of the key points where we put in place mitigating controls to ensure the discoverability part that typically comes along with privacy hand in hand. But a very important risk mitigating factor is the fact that most of these systems are publishing publicly to a ledger. Swift, Fedwire, and cash movements do not publish to public ledgers and transactions. So this highlights that none of these technologies are inherently high risk, that are completely inevitable to remain that way without any possible mitigations that can be built in. So now I want to close with focusing on some of the actions that the U.S. government has been pursuing, focused on privacy, where we're taking actions to promote and seek tangible solutions and partnerships in this space. In June of this year, the National Science Foundation launched a new investment of $23 million in the privacy-preserving data sharing and practice program, aligned with President Biden's EO on safe, secure, trustworthy development and use of AI, partnered with Departments of Transportation and Commerce to enhance private information sharing and analysis of data for a range of use cases and applications. This program solicits proposals, and those proposals are still open for people that want to apply to them along 3 tracks for programs ranging from $500,000 to $1.5 million, focusing on advancing key technologies to enable practical privacy-preserving data and analytic solutions, as well as looking for test beds for the trustworthy sharing of private and confidential data. Privacy also featured as a core element in the administration's continued partnerships under the Summit for Democracy. On March 17th this year, USAID launched the Advancing Digital Democracy Academy, which was focused on providing partnership and with multinational firms that like Cloudflare, and Google and Microsoft to offer essential skills in training in cybersecurity, data privacy, cloud computing, and responsible AI, amongst other topics, to build on some of the successes from our second Summit for Democracy. Also near and dear to many of those here, and many former Treasury officials are standing here today. I see them. Treasury's de-risking strategy, published last year, focused and underscored on how important emerging technologies and digital identity solutions can be to address arbitrary de-risking of populations that have long been either denied or marginalized access to critical services, and where integrating privacy-enhancing technologies could end up providing key solutions. Trust in financial services was a major pillar that was discussed in the de-risking strategy, and I very much appreciated that. FinCEN, which is the U.S. anti-money laundering regulator, I'm sure most here are familiar with, along with the FDIC, ran a tech sprint focused on digital identity solutions, and explored how privacy-enhancing technologies like homomorphic encryption and multi-party computation, as well as zero-knowledge proofs, could be able to support secure, privacy-protected information sharing. I'll also highlight where FinCEN has been taking action to address the risks of improperly calibrated anonymity that ends up not quite achieving the right application of privacy, which is their 311 designation of mixed cryptocurrency transactions, which they designated as of primary money laundering concern after publishing an advisory many years ago highlighting that mixed transactions are often used in money laundering activity by cyber criminals and other actors that use cryptocurrency for their illicit purposes. They still are ongoing in that effort after receiving public comment from also many of those in this room. So that's another instance of some action that U.S. government has underway about achieving the right application and balance for privacy, but ensuring against the unnecessary and destabilizing obfuscation that can occur that's against our anti-money laundering principles and what's needed to safeguard the financial sector. And then I'll highlight some actions recently in the AI NSM, given that it was published today, that's really pointed at this privacy space. So with the AI EO last year, President Biden called on Congress to pass bipartisan data privacy legislation. I know there's some people who are going to talk about legislation coming next, and I'm very curious to hear what they have to say about if privacy legislation is on the frontier. Also a requirement for agencies to evaluate how we are looking at and collecting and using commercially available data and information, and that we strengthened our privacy guidance to agencies, including for national security missions, on use of this data. The NSM provides the first ever guidance for AI governance and risk management for national security missions, requiring mechanisms for risk management, evaluations, accountability, and transparency here to mitigate issues around safety and unnecessary harm, issues of bias, and human rights abuses. The NSM also, interestingly, is pointed at how competitors are trying to upend U.S. AI leadership through technology espionage and intellectual property theft, which is targeting and underscoring the privacy of your inventions. So in this NSM, President Biden makes collection on our competitors' operations against the U.S. AI sector a top intelligence priority, and directs the provision of information on counterintelligence and cybersecurity information to U.S. AI stakeholders and companies as needed to help them keep their inventions private and secure. So I wanted to emphasize that last one because that's an interesting point of privacy, right? Where we have the intelligence and national security community helping you to keep your inventions private from those rogue nations that are trying to undermine the integrity and security and steal your inventions. Finally, I did mention that I was inspired by a lot of Tony's remarks, and I figured I would close, since I brought up learning how to don my gas mask in 9 seconds when I was a kid living in Korea. Something that I shared at the NDU when I was speaking on critical infrastructure security, something that I know that at least Stuco and a few others have talked about earlier today. I don't know if anyone here ever lived in Korea or worked in Indo-PACOM and knows Task Force Smith. But when I was a kid, my dad brought us to this, which was one of the first battle in the Korean War, and he made me and my sister lay down in the trenches to see if we could fit, because of course. And I heard this story, and I learned it when I was an Army officer. I was commissioned as a chemical officer, and we learned in operational readiness world, we would hear this term, no more Task Force Smiths, and this lesson that we learned about ensuring that we never have that kind of operational readiness failure again, and then understanding the type of valor and sacrifice that normally ends up coming in place when you have a failure of operational readiness. And basically what happened was some general officers, including General MacArthur, thought that only this small battalion task force supporting South Korean troops would be enough to deter North Korea troops as they were coming south across the peninsula, and that wasn't the case. We were not equipped to be able to repel the North Koreans that had been equipped by the Soviets and the Chinese with T-34 tanks, and then this failure of operational readiness meant that half of the members of this task force were killed or captured. Why am I bringing that up? Why am I talking about the Korean War? Because that is the last time that we were in open conflict with Chinese troops. And I mentioned I work in cybersecurity and critical infrastructure. Right now we are facing a situation where Chinese cyber criminals are transitioning from a focus on intellectual property theft and instead pre-positioning on our critical infrastructure for a potential disruptive impact in the wake of a crisis or a conflict. So I brought that up at the National Defense University as a moment of saying, I don't want this to be a moment that we read about 70 years later. I don't want someone looking back and saying that this was the moment that we failed to be operationally ready for something that was coming and that we saw the potential to happen. And inspired by Tony's remarks, it makes me think about some of the cryptocurrency space and also AI, that if we don't, what readiness normally means is taking steps beforehand to ensure that you can withstand some kind of exploitation or conflict, and then that you can recover from it also quickly. I think that initially in the blockchain space and potentially in the AI space, if we don't put in place the right safeguards, this is a calling for needed readiness for security, readiness for privacy. We did not put in place necessary controls with these technologies before we launched them with their first use case being the financial sector, which is a very high risk use case, and because of that, it's been exploited by a lot of illicit actors. However, we can learn those lessons. Like I mentioned, the NDU conference was focused on learning those lessons to prepare prepare for tomorrow. So these kinds of conversations and focusing on where technologies can ensure the necessary privacy, but also balancing where national security interests, privacy, human dignity, and freedom all have to intersect to achieve our mutual vision. So I wanted to share that little anecdote because I just feel that there's a bit of a touch point there about that this is a readiness issue, that we need to ensure that the necessary safeguards are in place as the technologies continue to grow and propagate and be used and continue to drive more commingling of commerce with digital domain. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you all. I'm looking forward to the rest of the conversations today.